Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know how we've all been talking about AI and privacy? Well, today we're going to get into that with this article called How to Protect Yourself from AI by Understanding This.
Yeah, this is a really interesting one. It
Yeah.
gets into some of the hidden ways that AI is interacting with our data.
Right, and you know what really caught my eye was the way it breaks down like the anatomy of an AI system.
Oh, yeah.
They've got those three main parts: the transformers, the models, and the agents.
Yeah.
They kind of use this analogy where it's like the transformer is the brain. It crunches all the numbers and figures things out.
Yeah, and the model is almost like a giant library of information that the AI uses to draw from.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So is that model like constantly learning?
Well, actually, that's a really good point. Most of these models are what's called static.
Okay.
So it's not like they're always updating and learning new stuff. They're trained on a massive data set,
Mm.
sometimes almost a terabyte in size.
Wow.
And then they basically stay frozen unless they're specifically retrained.
Oh, that's interesting. So if the model isn't constantly learning, then what's all this talk about AI getting smarter all the time?
Well, the article makes this really interesting point that it's not actually the AI brain itself or even the static model that's the biggest privacy concern.
Okay.
It's these things called agents.
Agents.
Yeah, so these are like little software programs that live on our devices.
Mm.
And they're the ones that are constantly gathering data and feeding it to the AI.
Wait a second. So there are like digital spies on my computer and phone right now.
You could think of it that way?
Yeah.
They're like the AI's eyes and ears constantly collecting info in the background, even when you're not actively using any AI features.
Okay, this is starting to feel a little creepy.
Yeah.
I bet you're going to tell me that this happens even with those helpful AI assistants we all use,
Mm.
like Apple Intelligence and Windows Copilot.
Exactly. They seem super convenient, right?
Mm.
But the thing is, they rely on those agents to actually work.
Mhm.
And those agents are always collecting data. Like it could be your browsing history or your location or even the files you open on your computer.
So we're getting all these cool features and personalized experiences, but the trade-off is that our every digital move is being tracked and analyzed.
Pretty much. The article gives a couple of examples that are kind of chilling.
Like what?
Well, there's one called Windows Recall, which is an agent that actually takes screenshots of what you're doing and analyzes them using AI.
Oh.
And then there's Apple's Media Analysis D, which scans every new file you add to your system.
No way.
Yeah, it catalogs personal data and media content without you even starting the process.
So these agents are basically creating a detailed profile of our activities, our interests, maybe even our personalities, and then feeding that to the AI.
Right. And it's not just about them collecting the data, it's about how that data is used. It shapes the context that the AI is operating in, which can have some pretty big effects on how we experience technology.
Okay, so this context thing sounds important. Tell me more about that.
Well, it's like the AI is getting to know you better than you know yourself.
Hmm.
And then it uses that knowledge to tailor its responses and recommendations. And it might not always be a good thing.
Yeah, right. Like the article gives that example of the AI recommending an electric vehicle just because you've looked at them online before. Even if like a gas car might actually be a better fit.
Exactly. That's what's so interesting about this whole context idea.
Yeah.
It's not just about the raw data itself.
Yeah.
It's about how that data is being interpreted and used to potentially influence our choices.
So it's not even just about protecting our data from being stolen or misused.
Right.
It's also about making sure that it's not being used to kind of manipulate us or even just reinforce those biases we already have.
It really is. The AI is kind of building a filter bubble around you based on all your past behavior and what you like,
Yeah.
And it can be hard to break out of that.
Yeah. So what can we actually do about this? Feels like we're constantly being trapped and analyzed whether we want to be or not.
Well, the good news is that we're not totally powerless. There are definitely things we can do to minimize how much data we're sharing.
Okay.
And just to be more aware of how that data is being used.
So what are some of those things? I know the article mentions using open source AI models locally, on our own devices. So can you explain what that even means and why it's better for privacy?
Sure. So instead of relying on those big companies with their data-hungry agents,
Right.
you can actually download and run AI models on your own computer.
Oh.
So it's like cutting out the middleman
Gotcha.
and keeping your data safe on your own machine.
It sounds kind of techy, though. Are there examples that normal people can use?
Totally.
Yeah.
There are some really great options out there. AMA is getting super popular.
Okay.
And then Meta's Llama is another one. And these offer a lot of powerful AI capabilities without having to worry about the privacy issues of those cloud-based systems.
So it's kind of like having your own personal AI assistant, but it respects your privacy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about taking back control of the technology and using it how you want.
What about some other steps we can take? I think the article also mentioned limiting our reliance on embedded AI.
Right. That's a big one.
Yeah.
All those convenient features like Apple Intelligence or Windows Copilot,
Uh-huh.
well, they come with those embedded agents that we were talking about earlier,
Right.
the ones that are constantly collecting data. So if you opt for devices where you have more control over the operating system, that can make a huge difference.
So like what kind of devices are we talking about?
Linux-based systems are a really great option.
Okay.
They usually don't have all those pre-installed AI agents.
Hmm.
So you get a lot more freedom and control over your data.
Okay. Linux got it. What about smartphones, though?
Well, some Android phones are surprisingly open.
Really?
Yeah, you can actually install open source operating systems on some models.
Oh, cool.
And that completely gets rid of the problem of embedded agents. Yeah.
So there's hope for us smartphone addicts. Any particular brands or models that you'd recommend?
Google Pixel devices are a good place to start. They have a pretty open platform compared to some other brands.
Okay.
And then on the other hand, you have devices from brands that are really strict about controlling their operating systems. Like Apple, for example.
Yeah.
That could be a bit of a problem from a privacy perspective because their whole closed ecosystem makes it really hard to avoid those embedded agents.
Gotcha. So the main takeaway here is to just be aware of the operating system and the level of control it gives you over your data.
Exactly. And staying informed is super important too.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on your privacy settings and updates for all those AI devices you use.
Right.
Because a lot of systems now offer ways to adjust how much data they collect.
Okay.
So it's definitely worth taking the time to really understand those settings and choose what works for you.
Okay. So open source AI Linux, being mindful of our settings. Anything else we should keep in mind for protecting our privacy in this whole AI world?
One thing that a lot of people forget is strong passwords and two-factor authentication.
So like the basics still matter.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
AI can be used to crack passwords and get around security measures.
Right.
So having a good first line of defense is super important. And then two-factor authentication just adds another layer of protection,
Yeah.
So it makes it way harder for someone to access your accounts.
Got it. Strong passwords, two-factor. What else?
Being careful about what information you share online is huge.
You mean like not posting our whole lives on social media?
Well, yeah, that's part of it. But it's also about being aware of all the data that's being collected behind the scenes, even when we're not actively sharing stuff.
Right.
Like your browsing history, what websites you visit, and your search terms. All of that can be used to create a really detailed profile about you.
Right. And then that profile can be used to target us with ads or manipulate our opinions or even try to predict our behavior.
It's kind of scary when you think about it.
It is. So what can we do to kind of minimize our digital footprint?
Using a VPN can really help.
A VPN?
Yeah, a virtual private network.
Oh, okay.
It encrypts your internet traffic and masks your IP address.
Gotcha.
So it makes it a lot harder for websites and advertisers to track what you're doing online.
It's like an invisibility cloak.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then another good step is to use a privacy-focused search engine like DuckDuckGo
Okay.
because they don't track your searches or collect your data.
So you can search the web without leaving a trail of breadcrumbs.
Exactly.
We've covered a lot here. VPNs, privacy-focused search engines, strong passwords, two-factor authentication, being mindful of what we share online.
It's a lot to remember.
It's a lot.
But even if you just do a few of these things, it can make a big difference in protecting your privacy.
And it's about making those choices on purpose,
Yeah.
instead of just going with the defaults.
Absolutely. It's about taking control of your digital life and making sure that tech is working for you, not the other way around.
I like that. So to our listener out there, what steps are you taking to protect your privacy in this whole AI-driven world? We want to know.
Yeah. Share your thoughts with us, on social media or through the website.
Mm-hmm.
This is something we need to talk about together.
Right.
Because the future of AI and privacy really depends on all of us being informed and engaged and standing up for a digital world that respects our rights and values.
Well said. Okay, so we're going to move on to the final part of our deep dive now.
Okay.
Where we'll explore some even bigger questions about the future of AI and what it means for all of us. It's pretty amazing to think about how much power we actually have when it comes to shaping the future of AI and privacy.
Yeah, it really is. It takes all of us.
One thing that really stood out to me from this article was the idea that we're not just like data points You
Oh,
know,
yeah. That's so important.
Sure.
We're not just things to be analyzed and manipulated.
We're people with our own choices.
Right, exactly. We have our own agency, and we get to decide how our data is used.
And those choices have real consequences.
They do.
Hmm.
Not just for us as individuals, but for, like, society as a whole.
Right. It's like all this data is being used to make decisions that affect our lives in huge ways.
From getting a loan to job opportunities to
Uh,
healthcare and even legal stuff.
it's almost like there's this whole new power dynamic
Yeah,
where whoever controls and understands data has a big advantage over everyone else.
that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And it's something we need to be aware of, especially as AI becomes more involved in decision-making.
So how do we even things out? How do we make sure everyone benefits from AI without giving up their privacy and control?
Well, I think it starts with education and awareness.
Okay.
The more people understand how AI works and what the risks are,
Yeah.
the more they can demand transparency and accountability from the people in charge.
So it's about empowering people to take control of their own data and make informed choices about how it's used.
Exactly. Not just blindly accepting whatever these companies tell us.
And we need to have a bigger conversation about the ethics of AI. Because it's not just about the technical stuff. It's about morality and philosophy.
Yeah. These are issues that affect all of us.
You know, speaking of solutions, I want to go back to something we talked about before, open source AI,
Oh, yeah.
as a way to address some of these privacy concerns.
I think that has a lot of potential.
Okay.
Instead of relying on these big corporations and their models,
Right.
we can use models that are developed and maintained by the community.
Yeah.
That way we reduce the risk of data being exploited. And we make sure the tech is actually helping everyone, not just a select few.
It's like taking back the power.
Exactly. Making tech work for us for once.
And it's great to see that open source AI is getting more popular.
It is. It shows that people want more transparency and control over their data.
So it's not just about individual choices.
Right.
It's about supporting and promoting alternatives that put privacy and ethics first.
It's about creating a better system for AI development.
Yeah, one that benefits all of humanity. I think that's a perfect place to wrap things up. This article has given us so much to think about.
It really has.
And it's just the beginning.
Yeah. It's a conversation that needs to continue.
We encourage you to keep learning about AI and privacy. Read research, ask questions.
And share what you learn with others.
Because together we can create a future where tech makes our lives better without compromising our values.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into AI and privacy.
It's been great having you all.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Take care, everyone.